All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for listening and watching, following the show. I do appreciate you very much. Today's episode, as always, is presented by Sunny Reds, 1531 Abbott Road, Lackawanna, literally about 5 minutes or so away from Highmark Stadium. Some of the best wings, food, drinks, vibes that you'll get anywhere in Western New York. One of my best sleeper spots in all the area. Make sure you go and check them out. All right, so we are getting to the point now where storylines and the biggest talking points for this Bills Chiefs AFC Championship game coming up on Sunday, they're starting to emerge. And I wanted to talk about it with somebody who's never been on the show before. So I'm also excited about that. Joining me right now from the Trainwreck Sports umbrella, my guy Mike Bundt, man. What's going on, dude? How you doing, Mike? Thank you for coming on. I talked to you literally earlier this afternoon. I said, yo, you got some free time later to come on? And you said yes, man. Good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm always down for talking Bills football. So you could have just texted me 2 minutes ago. I would have found a way to make this work. But appreciate the opportunity, and what a fun time to be talking about the Bills with the chance of going back to the Super Bowl for the first time since I was very young.
You know, I think maybe you misunderstood, buddy, because what I meant to tell you was we're going to spend the next hour talking about the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres hockey.
Then I would change my opinion on that.
Just joking. Look, I've been doing some Sabres hating of late, and it's probably not going to stop anytime soon. But fortunately, that's not what we're discussing today. Before we get into some of these storylines, though, and big talking points, like I mentioned, you were part of Trainwreck Sports, and I got to tell you, man, I've known Maniac, a couple of the other people now for quite a long time. And, you know, I've said this many times on this show, social media. I have a lot of respect for what Trainwreck Sports does. I respect their grind. You know, through the years, I've had a couple differences here and there with Maniac, a couple of the other guys. We call it out, we hash it out, whatever. But one thing I have always admired and respected a lot about Trainwreck Sports, something that I think that entity doesn't get nearly the credit for that it deserves, is the grind, the hustle. You guys are out all over the place, not just Bills games and Sabres games and that kind of coverage, which is cool, but you guys get out to everything. You specifically, I know you do a lot of college stuff as well. You are a really solid source for UB football, among other college stuff, but like UB football really kind of became your thing as well. But whether it's that, like the Micah Hyde charity softball games, Batavia, wherever you guys, if there's something going on, chances are you're going to see a camera and either Maniac or someone else from Trainwreck Sports out there covering it. It's been, like I said, I really respect the commitment to bring in stuff beyond just the Bills and just the Sabres. And you guys do that very well, especially you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We just really love covering sports and being part of it. We like to have fun, and I think that's what separates us from a lot of the other content creators in the Buffalo sports sphere. Yeah, we think we know what we're talking about, but at the end of the day, we're not trying to outsmart anybody or out-analytic anybody. We're just trying to talk about the teams that we enjoy, and we want to interact with other fans, whether that be hundreds of thousands of Bills fans, the thousands of Sabres fans, or the dozens of Canisius, Niagara, and UB fans for basketball at the moment. And I just to say a quick thing about me, I actually used to be a sports anchor in the past for several TV stations. So for Trainwreck, it's kind of just an opportunity to do what we love to do. We have Zach, who is the fun guy. You got Slick, who is just a crazy
silly dude.
Really,
I like him.
Fun guy. And then I try to bring a little bit more of the serious side of things. But I do appreciate that you take notice, and we just love what we're doing here.
I think there is a lack of non-Bills, non-Sabres coverage in Western New York as a whole. And I point the finger in part, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I point the finger at myself because I could be doing a better job of highlighting UB football or Niagara basketball, you name it, whatever, women's sports, all kinds of other things. I think there's too much focus, primarily just on the Bills and Sabres, and not enough to go around. And again, Trainwreck Sports does a really phenomenal job of just getting out and doing all that other stuff that most people don't do. And specifically you. Before we jump into some Bills KC stuff here, let me ask you this. How much you enjoy doing the other stuff compared to saying talking Bills? Talking ball is always going to be fun. The Sabres, when they're playing well, I mean, obviously that's a lot of fun as well. But it seems to me like you really got that soft spot for amateur sports, college sports, and things like that.
Yeah, I love UB football as much as anything else I do around here. I have an appreciation for what they are as athletes. I think a lot of people in this area, because it's always been a professional sports town, they don't realize the high level of athlete that plays at that school. They're used to schools like Alabama, Ohio State dominating, and they look down on it. Sean Dolak is a first team All-American from West Seneca. I still don't think there's enough people from Buffalo who know who he is. And when the whole Joe Andreessen story was going on with the Bills, I just hear shock and amazement. It's like, because you haven't been taking the opportunity to watch these guys. And if you did, you would know, like, not you specifically, but the average Buffalo sports fan in general. And then when I talk about Big Four basketball, Canisius, Niagara, St. Bonaventure, UB, I grew up on that. My dad went to Canisius College. My uncle went to St. Bonaventure. I've had friends and family attend almost all the schools in the area. And I used to be told stories about what it was like in the 60s and the 70s, and Bonaventure making a Final Four, Canisius making an NIT Final Four in the 90s, then finally ending their drought under Beeline, and even Niagara in the 2000s with Joe Mahalik. Like, this stuff matters to me. And I understand why the average Buffalo sports fan doesn't care that much anymore. They've had hard times. It's not something that is mainstream, but there are still fans out there. And I wish that, not that we're ever going to get back to what it was, but that we could at least give them some coverage, because they are Division I institutions, and even D2. Damon is a top 5 team in the country right now in men's basketball. So it's just something I wish that we say we're a diehard sports community, and we really are. But I think in order to be truly 100% accurate, it should extend beyond just the professional sports.
As somebody who spent most of my life in Buffalo, but I lived in Florida for 5.5 years, from like 2016 to 2021, and I saw this firsthand. Buffalo's more of a pro sports town. When you go to Florida, at least in certain areas where I lived, I was about maybe 45 minutes or so from Tampa, south of Tampa. And God's honest truth, in Florida, a lot of areas of Florida, high school sports, especially football, and college football, especially, or college basketball as well, they're literally bigger than the professional sports. Like, more people in the areas of Florida where I lived care more about, like the best high school players and teams in Florida State or Miami than they actually did about the Dolphins or the Buccaneers or, the Tampa Lightning, even though they're a great hockey team, the Florida Panthers, things like that. It's just kind of flipped here in Buffalo. But I do, and real quick too, you mentioned Sean Dolak. Known him since he was a kid. His father coached my son in Little League football, so I know the Dolaks for quite a while. And I had him on the show. We did a live show maybe a handful of months ago at Imperial Pizza. He's one of the most impressive people that you'll ever meet. And I know you know this because you know him. One of the most impressive people off the field that you'll ever meet as well. I mean, to be his age and still, a college kid, a young man, and to be as insightful and well-spoken and articulate his thoughts in the manner that he does, and as humble as he is for the success that he's had, especially this year, that to me was pretty remarkable. And he's got a great future. Hopefully it's in the NFL, but no matter what he does, he's got a great future. He has helped to some extent shine a light on UB football, not to the extent it deserves, of course, but he has really helped. And that linebacker pipeline, man, Red Murdoch might be, speak on him real quick. Then we're going to dive into Bills. I promise you, folks. We all know about Sean. Sean's a beast. He's a stud. Great dude. But this Red Murdoch, man, he's He is the truth. That Bahamas Bowl, if you happen to watch that, you know what I'm talking about. Unstoppable. Man, that kid is going to be, here he is, the real deal.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned him because that's something I've been struggling with all season, with giving Sean all the hype and rightly deserved. You have a linebacker next to him who is having one of the best defensive seasons in UB history
Yeah.
that is getting overlooked. And yeah, Red Murdoch is incredible. He set a UB single season record for fumbles forced in the season. I believe he forced 7 fumbles this year, had 2 forced in the Bahamas Bowl. I believe he also had a pick 6 in that game, finished top 5, I think even top 3 in the country in tackles. And he's only a sophomore. So he still has a couple of years of eligibility remaining. And for everything that Dolak did, I think it's safe to say that Murdoch has a chance to do all of that as well. The question for Murdoch is going to be, is he going to continue doing that at UB for the rest of his career, or is he going to take his talent somewhere else at some point? Because with Dolak, we all kind of know the story. Started as a walk-on. His success was a little bit surprising early on, then got injured, was going to go to Utah State, missed home, came back, and then had the season of a lifetime. Murdoch doing this as a sophomore after what Sean Dolak has already done in front of him, it's going to be hard for UB to keep him for 4 years. I hope they do, but it's only time before a bigger program with an NIL deal comes calling for him and asks him to be a starting linebacker at probably a P5 level.
Yeah, it's like the elephant in the room that I really don't speak of, but that Bahamas
you
Bowl,
don't need to go down that way. It's just
the ink wasn't even dry on the Bahamas Bowl, and that was my thought. I'm like, this kid's still got a couple of years left. There's going to be big schools that come calling for him because he is a big school caliber type of linebacker. We'll see how it plays out. But no matter how it does, this was just an incredible, enjoyable season. The resurrection, so to speak, of UB football back to prominence. And I hope a lot more people start to get on that bandwagon and follow the team going forward. All right, let's get down to some business here. Obviously, Bills, Chiefs, all the marbles for the AFC Championship Sunday, 6:30 p.m. Let's start here. Like I said, some talking points that I want to get your perspective on, some storylines, things like that. Let's start by talking of pressure for both these teams. You look at, say, the Washington Commanders right now, okay? They're in the NFC Championship game against Philly. It's awesome. It's a great story. Washington, I feel like, is 100% playing with house money. They got nothing to lose. Ain't nobody expected them to be in the NFC Championship game this fast. Yet here they are playing for the chance to go to the Super Bowl, just like Buffalo and Kansas City. Again, I feel like they got nothing to lose. If they happen to lose in Philly, it's like, whatever. This was a W. This was an incredible season for Washington, and we're so excited about the future if you're a Commanders fan. This game, the pressure is enormously high for both these teams for different reasons. Buffalo, the obvious reasons, and I want you to speak on that. Why you think this is such a high-pressure game for Buffalo, legacy game, whatever you want to call it. But it's also for Kansas City because they're trying to do right now something that no one has ever done in the history of the NFL. They are trying to win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. Nobody has ever done that. They want to be historic. In fact, there's only 2 teams that have ever went to 3 straight Super Bowls. Of course, the Bills, who went to 4 in a row. In Miami, I think it was Super Bowls like 6 through 8. Those are the only teams that ever even go to 3. So it's been that long since anyone's done that, and no one has ever won it 3 straight times. So there's a lot of pressure there, too, to get that done, to like I said, do something unprecedented. I want you to kind of speak a little bit from Buffalo's perspective on how you feel what the pressure is for them to get over this hump and get to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it's an enormous pressure on the Bills because just think of the narratives that are out there. The Bills can't beat Kansas City when it matters. It doesn't matter that they've won 4 straight regular season games. You haven't won in the playoffs.
Sure.
You're 0-3 against Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Kelsey when the games count. And I feel like that's an enormous weight on their shoulders because it's been a tremendous season. You went 13-4 in the regular season. You finally got a big playoff win in the divisional round over an MVP quarterback, Lamar Jackson. But if you lose this game, you open next year with the same question that you've had since 2020. And That is, can you get past this team? And if you can't get past Kansas City during a season like this, where they're showing vulnerabilities, they're not great offensively. We all know it's only a matter of time before Andy Reid and Mahomes finally figure things out again offensively, and they go back to being able to put up 30 points a game. And then it's going to just get that much more difficult. So I think the good news for the Bills is getting past the divisional round. They finally got that little thing behind them. So they've moved past that smaller narrative, but now you're on to a much bigger challenge. And how much do the players carry it on their shoulders? I don't know. I feel like the fan base, us as a fan base, we do. I don't know if the players feel the same exact way, though.
When it comes to, like, say, Josh Allen and Sean McDermott specifically, like, I feel like I hate the term legacy game. All right. That really bothers me. But it's a narrative. Sean McDermott can't win the big one. Josh Allen's fantastic, but he can't beat Patrick Mahomes. How significant is it for them personally to kind of get that monkey off their back? Like, what changes if the Bills win this game? Even if they were to go on and lose a Super Bowl, it feels like you've broken, that glass and got yourself to another level. How important is it, in your opinion, for Josh Allen, and maybe even more so Sean McDermott specifically, to be able to win this football game for their own, again, even though I don't like the term, I'll say it again, for their own legacy?
Yeah, from a narrative perspective, a win over the Chiefs would change the way these two individuals are looked at forever. Because not only would you be defeating the Chiefs, you would be defeating a Chiefs team coming off 2 consecutive Super Bowl victories. So you're the team that ended it. You're the team that snapped that chance at going for history and for a three-peat. So you'll be remembered forever either way, regardless of if you win or lose the Super Bowl. Obviously, you want to win it to cement your own legacy. But I think this is probably a little bit bigger for McDermott than it is for Josh Allen, because Josh has played great in his performances against KC in the past. And we know it wasn't his fault they lost 13 seconds. And even last year, he had a very solid performance. They just didn't come through at the end. I think last week was big for McDermott. It showed that he can beat big-time opponents. But I think until he beats Kansas City in the playoffs, people are going to be wondering if he is the coach that can get them over the hump. And it'd be different if Mahomes was 35 and Allen was 28, and you knew Mahomes had 2-3 more years of solid football, and that you would have your period where Josh Allen would be the best in the league. These guys are going to be in the league for basically the same time together. So at some point, you as a head coach have to show that you have a plan to beat them, because you're not moving on from Josh Allen. So I think for this game, if McDermott got a win, it would show, yes, he is the guy that can get them over the hump against the best in the league. And then after Kansas City, it's just, well, you got to just take care of business. You got to win the games that you're supposed to win. You're a better team than Washington. You're a slightly better team than Philadelphia. Take care of business.
From, I want to make sure I say this right. Do the vibes this year just feel different? There, a prominent theme on this show, and whether it's me or a guest, that's been discussed a lot, is just things just feel different this year. Maybe even little things, like going back to the football game just this past Sunday. Like, I thought the cold was an advantage to the Bills, but I thought if it would have been really bad with wind and snow and it came down to just pure running games, I feel like eventually over 4 quarters, maybe not though. Maybe it would have been an advantage to Baltimore. Anyway, you're here. Don't really snow until the next day. And then it's pretty much blizzard city here in parts of Western New York on Monday. The way the Bills won that football game as opposed to the way they've lost kind of games in the past. Joe on the show earlier this week said it was a Billsy game. However, it wasn't the Bills that were being Billsy. It was the Baltimore Ravens that kind of had the Billsy things going on. Some of the weird turnovers, just things like that. They're taking care of the football, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But do you get any kind of sense? Is there anything in your own personal headspace that makes you feel like just this year just feels different? And maybe the expectations coming in had a lot to do with it, as opposed to being the Vegas betting favorites coming into the season the last few years. Wasn't the case this year, so maybe that's got something to do with it. Do you feel a little bit like things just feel different to you right now?
100%. The vibes are different on and off the field, and there's several reasons why. I know the first one everybody's going to obviously bring up. Stephon Diggs is gone, and I know that's not something that people want to talk about, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But that certainly did play a role, and I know
100%.
I've talked to players on the team.
Yeah.
The Diggs drama was real.
Yeah.
They would never say it in front of a microphone, but there was real things going on behind the scenes. And I've been told some of it did involve Diggs and Allen. So that's number one. The everyone eats was also, I think, a contributing factor, because you take away a star receiver, and what does that do? It obviously, defenses aren't focusing on that guy solo, but then you give your quarterback basically different options. He's not just focusing on one player in every big situation. You're forcing him to spread the ball out more and open things up. But I also think the changeover of so many veteran guys leaving this team and lowered expectations not only brought this team together, but it took off a tremendous weight that they were feeling. The last 3 years, they go into every year with the expectation you're competing for a Super Bowl. You are expected to be one of the best teams in the NFL. There was people picking them third in the AFC East behind the Jets and the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's outrageous. And when you move on, what happens a lot of times in the locker room too, and this kind of sucks because these guys built Buffalo into a winner. But when you have the same core group of guys and you fall short year after year after year after year, sometimes you just got to move on from some of them and get new blood and people that haven't been part of that losing. Part of the youth movement they did this offseason was because of salary cap issues. They didn't have the money. Some of it was guys getting older. But there was also an aspect of, we need to create this next window for our quarterback. We need to build for the future. And let's try to get younger guys involved and see what they can do. Because sometimes younger guys don't know any better. That's Jaden Daniels right now in Washington. He doesn't know that a rookie isn't supposed to be quarterbacking his team to the NFC Championship. Joe Burrow as a second-year quarterback getting the Bengals to the Super Bowl. And I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing a bunch of guys that are just out there doing their job, putting the team in front of themselves as individuals. And you're seeing when you do that, you're going to be successful. And then lastly, I think I don't know how to word this without being weird, but I also think it took the evolution of Josh Allen realizing I don't need to be Superman
to
win football games. The thought process of Sean McDermott finally talking to him about the complementary football. Just take care of the ball. Let's develop a running game. We're a really good team. We got a lot of good talent. Just trust what we're doing, and we're going to just beat teams. And that's kind of what Kansas City has done the last 2 years. Let other teams defeat themselves, and you're going to win a lot more games than you lose.
You know, it's funny because a year or so ago, when I would hear the term complimentary football from Sean McDermott, it used to drive me up the wall. I mean, we got the ultimate gambler, the ultimate gunslinger out there, and you want to play complimentary football. Fast forward a year later, it's like, that is one hell of a way to play football, because it is a formula that has really worked for the Bills. And Josh Allen has embraced it. If Josh Allen didn't embrace this form, this brand of football, if he didn't buy into it, it could be a problem, but it's not at all. At all. Josh Allen wants to win a Super Bowl. I don't think Josh Allen cares about his stats nearly as much as you and I and every Buffalo Bills fan out there does. I don't think he gives a shit, to be honest with you, about what his numbers are or any of that stuff. So now these teams played earlier this season, okay? How much stock, if anything, do you put into that game? I would advise everyone out there be a little bit careful, because the Bills went into Baltimore week 4 and got shellacked, and we saw just this past week. That doesn't guarantee anything the second time around. It's pretty much like a divisional game anyway, Mike. At this point, these teams have seen each other so much. But also, you look at the injuries from that first meeting, and both teams were missing a lot. The Bills on offense, no Spencer Brown, no Keon Coleman, no Dalton Kincaid. how did they score 30 points on the Chiefs without any of those guys? But they did. And obviously, Matt Milano wasn't playing yet either. But for the Chiefs, let's not lose sight of the fact they no Hollywood Brown, no Isaiah Pacheco, and no Jalen Watson. So it's not like the Chiefs weren't missing, good players as well. Well, how much stock, if anything, do you put into that game, and what should the Bills take away, if anything, going into this rematch?
Yeah, I don't put a ton of stock in that game because history has shown us not to overvalue regular season games when it comes to the playoffs. Like you just mentioned, Baltimore shellacked the Bills week 4, and
Mhm.
they just lost to us. So uh, I think what, as a team, you take out of it is that we belong with these guys. We absolutely have the
Sure.
ability to defeat this team. But if you're off your game, none of that is going to matter. So what I'd say is the injuries that the Bills had, that actually should give them a little bit more added confidence that they will have guys like Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, Spencer Brown. I think is the biggest of those three,
Probably, yes.
just because of how important he's been at right tackle, and you're going up against a really good Chiefs defense. But even Matt Milano, I think that's a huge addition you have in this game. I know you're saving it for later in the show, but I think Matt Milano might be the key to this game with the Bills defense. So what I would say is these teams have played each other enough times in the last 3-4 seasons where they know each other in and out. Are they going to surprise each other? Probably not much. What it really comes down to, who's going to execute at a higher level, and is there any lucky plays, takeaways, turnovers? And if it is a close game, who makes the play late when the game is on the line?
Josh Allen said during his presser on Wednesday that there's not much that either team's going to show you that you don't know. He said it's about executed, and I agree with him 1000%. Anyway, I'm going to take a real quick break. Come back on the other side. Plenty more storylines and big talking points that I want to get to with Mike Bundt from Trainwreck Sports. All right, I am back here with Mike from Trainwreck Sports. A little bit of we'll call some breaking news here. We're recording this. It's around 7-ish on Wednesday. They just put out the Bills color scheme, or their uniform scheme, for the game on Sunday. I was wondering, are they going to go white on white? Are they going to go white on blue? And it's all white. So it's a stormtrooper look for the Bills on Sunday. They will be wearing the white jerseys with the white pants. Got any thoughts on that? Did you have a preference?
I really don't have much of a
guy?
preference. Whenever I see people talking about the uniform combinations, I have no idea what they're better in, what they're not. I don't remember that type of stuff. But I like the white on white. I think Allen has had some memorable plays wearing the white on white. So hopefully it works out. If there is any stereo, I don't even know, like, any good luck to it. I hope it works out.
Well, they lost to Houston and they lost to the Rams with the blue pants this year. So I'm generally a white uniform or white jersey, blue pants guy, but in this case, I'm feeling the white on white. Again, everything feels different to me right now this year. So I'm liking that. One element of this game that I think is going to be incredibly important for the Bills, well, for both teams, in a way, is the Bills kind of like borderline dominant running game right now. And the Kansas City Chiefs, who I do think are going to make a much stronger commitment in this game to trying to stop the run, kind of like Buffalo did a little bit with Henry. But the Chiefs' run defense has been really, really leaky. They gave up 149 yards on the ground to Houston last week. They gave up 200 yards to Pittsburgh in week 17. Gave up 139 yards to Cleveland back in week 15. Now, of course, they ended up winning all those games because that's just what they do. They win. But my point is, teams have had success running on them. The Bills, they ran for $147 last week against Baltimore. They ran for 210 yards against Denver, which, by the way, that's the most rushing yards that either of those defenses gave up all season. And those are two great defenses that the Bills were successful with here in the playoffs. The Bills have ran for at least 100 yards in 9 of their last 10 games. And the one time they didn't, they got 97 yards. And that was against the Jets. This is a big, big part of the game, right, Mike? The Bills being able to continue running the ball for no other reason than to have some sense of balance in their offense versus a Chiefs team that has not been very good at stopping the run.
Yeah, running the ball has been the biggest reason why the Bills offense is where it is right now. It's funny because you look back to the end of last year when Joe Brady showed a commitment to running the ball. A lot of people were like, is this Joe Brady, or is this just him trying to be conservative, complimentary football? What is it? The reason why running the ball was so important is, one, it showed that the Bills saw where the trends in the NFL were going, at least defensively. And it's not just about that, because I know there's a lot of people that say, continue to pass. So you got an MVP caliber quarterback, use him to your advantage. Why are you getting conservative? The two big reasons why you need to run the ball effectively: one, game script. You need to be able to run the ball in certain situations. There's games where you're going up against a Lamar Jackson where you don't want them to be in a shootout with, because they can score 40 on you. So sometimes you have to be able to do that, or put a game away in the second half when you are up by a certain margin. And then number two, when you have the ability to run at will, defenses feel helpless against you. You already have that MVP quarterback, and now they also can run the ball against you. And I think when you look at the Bills' current weapons, especially in the passing game, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Dawson Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Mac Hollins, they don't, even Amari Cooper right now, they don't really have that X factor in the passing game. I know Khalil Shakir had a great season, and I think he could be one day, but he's still not an elite receiver in my mind. What happens is, by committing to the run, you force teams to stack the box against you at times, which is how you are going to make things happen in your pass game, to open things up for your marginal receiver talent in a way. So you almost have to have teams take account for it. And Eric Turner of Cover One had a nice stat the other day that basically showed, during the Dable and Dorsey times as offensive coordinator, the Bills rarely faced stacked boxes. So when they were struggling to run, at times they were struggling to run against light boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're facing stacked boxes 1/3 of the time, and they're still running at a very efficient mark against them. So you're basically setting yourself up to where you can do almost anything offensively. So if the Bills want to be in a shootout, yeah, they can still go in a shootout against a team like Detroit or the Rams. But if they're in a game where they're up, I don't know, 7 points with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they think they can run out that clock and win it. And it just gives them additional avenues to win and close games. And I think in the past, the Bills didn't have as many paths to victory as what they currently do now that they've established to run. Not that they have to always rely on it, but that it's a nice extra thing to have in their pocket.
You know, I'm glad you said it that way, because that's true. They got so many more paths to victory now than they did in the past. There's some teams out there that might have a superstar player, not just even in football, but in other sports. That player's not playing well that game, you're not winning. You know, like Josh Allen, look, if he sucks, the Bills are in a world of trouble, obviously. But if he's fine, pedestrian, okay, the Bills still have paths to win a football game against literally anybody right now. So that is definitely a key. Before we get into a couple juicy things, there's one thing it's annoying to talk about, but I got to bring it up because it does matter, and that's officiating. Officiating with Kansas City Chiefs games always seems to be a factor. And I want to be clear with you, Mike. I am not typically, and look, I'm on Twitter in real time, sometimes losing my mind during a Bills game, like that phantom holding call last week on Deion Dawkins or some other, I'll lose my shit here and there a little bit and get mad at the officials. They're ruining the game, this and that. They're too impactful in the game. But these Chiefs games, sometimes I'm not a conspiracy guy. I normally hate that shit. But sometimes it's like, what are we doing here with these calls that just always, always, always seem to go in their favor? And I saw a stat that just blew my mind. In 11 playoff games, the Kansas City Chiefs said the Kansas City Chiefs last 11 playoff games, I want to make sure I get this right. 0 times in 11 games, the Kansas City Chiefs have had more penalties called on them than their opponent. 0 times. 10 of those 11 times, the opponent got called more penalties. So one time it was even. All 10 other times, the opponent got called more penalties. That seems to be really, really lopsided. What's your thoughts on that? And then Clete Blakeman, who's going to be the head official for this game, I'm sure a lot of Bills fans noticed by now. good news for the Bills because the Chiefs are only 6-5 in games that he has officiated, and there's a long list of others, and almost all the numbers are way better with others. But are you concerned about that going in the game that the Chiefs just always seem to get the calls and often critical calls? Not that we're conspiracy people here, but it is noticeable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely noticeable. I'm not concerned about it going into this game. I do think a lot of that. I saw Mike Schopp have a tweet about it. The Chiefs have been the home team for the majority of those games, and oftentimes home teams do get a little bit of a favorable whistle. So not the most surprising stat in the world, even though it is very lopsided. But here's what I'd say: we all know Patrick Mahomes gets calls, and that the Chiefs get calls. That is not some conspiracy thing to say. We saw it against the Texans last weekend. There was an egregious call on a personal foul where the two Texans collided with each other. Mahomes was barely even contacted. So we know Mahomes gets calls. Josh Allen also gets calls. Both of them do. They're star quarterbacks in the league. What you hope to avoid is big calls that are incorrect in big moments. And that's the type of stuff that really fires people up. In the Bills game last week, the Deion Dawkins call, that was a horrible holding call. But I also don't think the pass interference on Trey White against Keon Coleman was a good call either.
Agreed.
So the Bills were gifted the Bills ended up getting a touchdown out of that. So the unfortunate part about refereeing is they're humans and they're going to make mistakes. And I don't think there's a corruption type problem. Like, I don't think the refs are going out of their way to be like, oh, I'm going to rig this for the Chiefs. But I do think there's some of that hidden bias where you're not even aware of it, where star quarterback gets hit and you're thinking, well, this guy's Patrick Mahomes. Like, and you're throwing a flag without even realizing in your head, maybe your previously like subconscious is leading you to throwing the flag because of who it is. While if it might be Lamar Jackson, maybe you're not throwing it in that situation. But what I will say is if there is a referee component, I actually think it helps out the Bills this week. Because what is the narrative after this past weekend? It's that the NFL is trying to get the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, that there was 3 big calls in the game. They all went for Kansas City. Well, you have Dave Portnoy. You have all these other big figures on Twitter just lambasting the NFL with how horrible their officiating is against the Chiefs and all this favoritism. Well, what normally happens when you see something in that way? Normally there's a tug back where the next crew isn't going to want to show that they're giving all these calls in that direction. So I do think if there is anything to come out of it, it might slightly benefit the Bills. And then with this crew this week, as you said, Mahomes is only 6-5 with them. They call the most penalties on home teams in the league. They call it I think the second most penalties on road teams in the league. So at the end of the day, there's probably going to be a lot of flags. Both fan bases are probably going to be equally angry at times, and we're still going to have a really good game.
One of the biggest low-key stats in a good way for the Bills from that Baltimore game, that phantom holding call on Deion Dawkins, only penalty of the game on the Bills. That's it. 1 penalty for 10 yards that whole football game. I do not expect to see that again in Arrowhead on Sunday. I just really hope, there's going to be a couple of calls that piss you off. There's going to be a call or two, hopefully, that you're like, whoo, got away with one there. A non-call that you get away with, or a call that, that should have been, not a penalty on Kansas City, what it's called. Hopefully that balances out a little bit. I just really hope that in the last 5 minutes in a critical portion of the game, that some bullshit late hit or, offensive pass interference or some kind of PI, something like that is not called that really directly impacts the outcome of the game. I love football so much, but one of my least favorite things about this sport, especially in recent years, is it just seems like official calls have just too much impact on these games. Let the players decide the game, not the officials. So I'm sure we all can agree on that. We kind of talked about this a little bit. I want to circle back here briefly. Do you think the Bills actually need big games from Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman this week? Like a lot of people think if the Chiefs are able to kind of stymie that run, they commit to it a little more this week, because this is the crazy thing. The Bills have they've had no problem scoring in the postseason, and combined, the two caught 1 ball for 5 yards last week. They got 3 catches for 13 against Denver. So both playoff games. Kanas Coleman's got 1 catch for 5 yards in each game. And Amari Cooper has been a literal non-factor. Who, by the way, need to point this out if people didn't catch pressers from Wednesday. Great attitude. He doesn't care. He does not care about his stats, his numbers, how many balls go his way. This dude just wants to get to the Super Bowl, and he doesn't care if he gets 9 targets or no targets, just wants to win. So that's definitely not an issue. But you kind of feel like this is the game in the AFC Championship that these guys, one of them at least, they definitely are going to need to break out or have some key plays in this game, or is the Bills just so successful at what they're doing that who gives a shit? It might not matter yet again, because we keep saying, oh, they're saving Amari Cooper for this, Amari Cooper for that. I'm like, maybe they're not.
Yeah, I don't think any individual player needs to have a star performance in order for the Bills to win this game. I think anybody on the offense has the capability of going off at any given time. And I think whether that player be a Dalton Kincaid, an Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, or anyone else on this offense, I think it's perfectly fine. I think that's the whole point of having the everyone eats offense, is that you don't need to rely on a few specific individuals to go off in order to have an ability to win. And sure, I would love to see Amari Cooper go 5 catches, 100 yards, and a pair of touchdowns. I would love to see Dalton Kincaid have a 6-catch, 70-yard day. But at this point, I don't think it's holding them back for a specific game at any point, because there's no guarantees you're going to get past Baltimore. I think this kind of is what it is. And I think that's why Josh Allen has been so effective, because he's just taking what's given to him at the current moment. And how do you stop that if you're an opposing defense? The whole thought process with Josh Allen in the past was that he would beat himself in certain moments of a game. So how would the Bills lose to the Patriots last year? How would the Bills lose to the Denver Broncos? It'd be the Jets on Monday Night Football. It'd be dumb turnovers that would normally lead to points. And then the Bills sometimes would be forced to play catch up or weird situations. Right now, they're just taking what's given to them. And I think when you have, I know it's easier said than done, and it's a very generalized thing to say, but sometimes football is that simple. You're a quarterback, you're more talented than everyone else on the field. If you have the ability to read what you're seeing, your offensive line gives you time. And even if they don't, you have the ability to run. That's the part of like processing and just being better than everyone else, is mentally and physically being beyond everyone. So no, I don't think they need Dalton Kincaid or Amari Cooper, but I do hope that one of them does step up in this game. My thought process going into this game is it's going to be a lower scoring game. I don't think this is the shootout of old Chiefs-Bills games. I think this has more likelihood to be a lower scoring game like the playoff game last year.
I agree with everything you just said. And furthermore, so earlier in this week, we were arguing about this a little bit. I had Joe on the show. We were arguing a little bit. He goes, we need Cooper to have a big game. I'm like, I don't agree with that. And here's why, quickly here. What's worked for the Bills right now, if Amari Cooper and Kanas Coleman get 12 targets or more in this football game, that symbolizes to me that the Bills might be throwing the ball more than they want to. You know what I mean? Like, they're throwing the ball down the field to the receivers more than they want to. They want to run the football. They want to control the football. They want to throw bubble screens to Khalil Shakir, work the middle of the field with Dawson Knox and Kincaid a little bit, dumping the ball. Ty Johnson has a nice role coming out of the backfield. That's their kind of their passing game. Again, in the way they run the ball with 3 different guys, 3 different ways. If you're giving Amari Cooper a lot of targets and you're giving Kanas Coleman a lot of targets, to me, that means they're shutting down what you've been doing really well. So you're going to other alternatives. So I think there's just as good, maybe even a better chance that if Amari Cooper and Kanas Coleman both have low numbers, that means the Bills' offense has been successful and it's doing their job.
And there's a good point to add to that too. And it's something that I think Sean McDermott and Josh Allen both have kind of learned together in the last year through this experience of the changes they've made under Joe Brady. It's the realization that in order to win in the playoffs, your margins of error are so narrow. So, yes, regular season, you're scoring 40 points, throwing for 350 against the Jaguars. So that's fine. Maybe you can do that against half the teams in the NFL. But are you going to be able to do that against the Kansas City Chiefs when it matters? And what's the answer to that most of the time? No. So how are you going to beat the Chiefs? You got to not turn the ball over. You need to keep up with them. So that's what the Chiefs kind of realized when they got rid of Tyreek Hill. They realized we're not going to be able to constantly win without the receiver talent we have now. We're going to throw the ball 40 times. We're going to get 350 yards passing, but we're going to turn the ball over. We're going to have issues. Other teams are going to be able to keep up on us. So the Bills have basically adopted that same approach where they're saying, okay, yeah, we'll light up some of these lesser teams in the league, but when we play the best of the best, if we're throwing it 40 times, we might throw 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
We throw 2 interceptions against the Chiefs, we're losing the game 90% of the time. So it's as much playing it safe as it is realizing, let's not lose the game. And a lot of people say, go out and win it. It's crazy to say this, but oftentimes in the NFL, not losing it leads to better results than let's go out and win it. It's crazy, but it's true, unfortunately.
Literally every game in the divisional round, the team that won had the fewer total yards, but they didn't turn the ball over. So that's absolutely truth to that. Kind of leading into this point, which I think might be the biggest one of all. It's like worlds collide and something's got to give. Or like when 2 undefeated boxers fight each other and the motto is someone's O's got to go. All right, you got 2 teams in the Chiefs and the Bills that have such impressive ball control right now. The Kansas City Chiefs, they led the NFL this season in plays per drive. So they don't go 3 and out. They led the NFL in plays per drive. They led the NFL in time of possession per drive this season. And they were 8th in drives ending in a turnover, the 8th best. Only 8.3% of their drives ended in a turnover this season. Now, conversely, you got the Buffalo Bills, only 4.2, 8 turnovers for the year, including the playoffs, by the way. 4.2% of the Bills' drives have resulted in a turnover. That's the lowest in the NFL in literally a quarter century. So you got the Bills who ain't turning the ball over, and you got Kansas City who's just keeping the ball and having longer sustained drives and also not turning the ball over. Your low scoring game might come to fruition just because these teams might not have 12, 13, 14 possessions apiece in this football game. It's like whoever wins this game is going to find a way to solve that. You know what I mean? Whether it's turnovers or just third down stops, whatever it may be. But these are 2 teams that are really impressive at keeping the ball and not turning it over.
Yeah, and that's what it makes it so difficult to go up against both of these teams is they kind of inflict their will on you. There's nothing more deflating as an opponent than going up against an offense that just keeps possession. They play after play after play, and they're converting third downs and they're draining the clock, and you just don't have an answer for whatever they're throwing at you. And I think that's what's so difficult against the Chiefs is, yeah, are they as explosive as what they used to be? Not at all. But their offense still moves the ball very effectively. They just do it in different ways, and that's kind of what the Bills have learned to do as well. The only way you could stop the Bills' offense in the past was by creating takeaways. Well, the Bills are going to hold on to the ball, and they're not going to give it to you. It might be the toughest offense in the NFL to prepare against. In going up against Josh Allen, going up against Mahomes, even if you get to them, they're going to make magic happen and improvise and do incredible things. So one of those things you figure is going to have to change. I don't know if it's going to be the Chiefs getting stopped by the Bills or if it's the Bills making uncharacteristic turnovers. But you figure in this game, one of those things is going to happen where it's going to end for them. And whoever has the bad side of the draw, their season is going to come to a close.
I think it is a huge, huge advantage to whatever team can get up enough to maybe make the opponent get off what they do so well. For an example, the Kansas City Chiefs build a pretty big early lead, and the Bills got to get off, slow, grinded out drives, running the football, and they got to air it out a little more. That I think plays into potentially at least the Chiefs' hands. Conversely, same thing with the Bills. If they can make Kansas City more one-dimensional and trying to get bigger chunk plays, that's where Pat Mahomes can turn the ball over. We've seen that. Not in the playoffs, we ain't seen it with him, but we've seen it in the regular season with Mahomes. What's one thing as we get ready to wind down here? What's one thing that each team should fear the most about the other team coming into this game?
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I honestly don't think these teams should fear anything of each other. To be honest, they're both so good overall. They should just try to do what they normally do. And I think if I had to say one thing for each team, for the Bills, you're hoping that you can still run the ball effectively and be able to set up the rest of your offense. I know the Chiefs' defense has had issues recently against the run, like you mentioned earlier on this podcast. But I would be a little concerned if the Bills do struggle to run the ball. If the Chiefs are able to slow it down, what do the Bills do in that situation? Because as you mentioned, the Bills can't really afford to fall behind this Chiefs team by much. And it's not even that I'm scared that Josh Allen can't come back in the game. It's more so I don't have enough faith in the Bills' receiving options against a secondary like the Chiefs, where if the Bills fall behind, I don't want them to be throwing the ball out because I'm afraid that's going to lead to those critical mistakes that the Chiefs capitalize. Everybody always asks, how do the Chiefs always win these close games time after time after time after time? It's not luck. We like to say it's luck. We like to diminish what they do. It's not luck. For many teams, it might be. But the Chiefs have learned a long time ago that other teams will lose games far often more than we're going to ever have to win games. And Chiefs let other teams crumble. They have the Super Bowls. They are used to the big game moments. The Chiefs are not going to lose a game to you most of the time. So for the Bills, I'd be a little worried if the Chiefs defensive line can get some pressure on Allen and stop the run early, because if the Bills are forced into a passing attack, I don't know how it's going to look. And then for the Chiefs, I would say they better not fall behind the Bills by double digits in the first half, or they could lose by a considerable margin. If there was a team to blow out each other, I think it's way better chance the Bills can blow out the Chiefs than the Chiefs blow out the Bills. I think on paper, these are two equal teams. They just go about things a lot different. The Chiefs are going to play closer games, and they're going to find a way to win those close games. The Bills, they like to be that team that plays from ahead, even against Baltimore. Jump out to a nice halftime lead and luckily able to hold on. But that's a place of comfort for the Bills, getting that lead early. I think whoever can get that early momentum is going to be huge in this game.
I think for the Bills, like we talked about earlier, I think Kansas City should be worried. There's just a myriad of ways that the Bills are capable of winning this game. They can win it by just controlling the ball and running it. We haven't seen it a lot, and we don't want to have to see it, but Josh Allen is capable, very capable, like what he did against Detroit, that kind of game as well earlier this season, or what he did back in 13 seconds, put the team on his back. He's certainly capable of that, and this is a defense that has made a living off takeaways, and they didn't need him against Denver. They needed him against Baltimore, and they got them, and that's why they're still playing today. So there's lots of ways that the Bills can win. And what I'm afraid of about the Chiefs the most is, you kind of mentioned it, they're just winners. They've won an NFL record, 16 straight games, one-score games. That's no accident at some point. They know how to win. They ain't getting rattled, and they're not going to beat themselves. That's just the way it is with the Chiefs. You can beat the Chiefs, but you're going to go take it from them. They're not going to give it to you. Kind of feel Baltimore did at least some of that last week. I don't think you're going to see that from the Chiefs. And then, of course, look, Pat Mahomes in the playoffs against the Bills is just ridiculous. He's 3-0. He's completed 75% of his passes. He's averaging 300 yards passing a game, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a 126.6 playoff rating, quarterback rating. And he's also won 21 of his last 22 starts this period, regular season and playoffs. Just don't lose much. I respect the Chiefs enough just saying that. I'm not afraid of the Chiefs, but you have to You got to respect that when it comes to them. I want you to give me an X factor. Give me one X factor you think in this football game is not Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen, of course. Give me one X factor from each team and why.
Yeah. So my X factors are actually going to be connected to each other here. Matt Milano for the Bills defense, and then Kelsey for the Chiefs offense. I think those are the two key players in this game, because we all know that Josh Allen, Mahomes, they're special. Anybody can mention them. That doesn't really add much to the conversation. Milano was phenomenal against the Ravens last week. He made a couple huge plays that literally made the difference in the Bills winning versus losing.
100%.
Finally looked like the old version of himself. And that's what the Bills need going up against Mahomes and Kelsey. Kelsey, in the first game against the Bills this year, did nothing. And the Bills were able to keep the Chiefs in check, and they won the game. But playoff Travis Kelsey is a different guy than regular season Travis Kelsey. And if they're able to get him going off, it's going to be tough for the Bills defense at times. I'm so conflicted in my head whether this is going to be a game where the Bills defense has a really solid performance and they hold the Chiefs to 17 points, or if this is going to be a game where Mahomes brings his Mahomes magic and they go for 31 points, because I'm a big believer the Chiefs do hold back in the regular season. They'll never admit it because it's just something you can't say. But I do believe good teams not dial it up for the playoffs, but they know when to get things rolling. They know when to get the playoff script going compared to the regular season script. You used to see with Brady all the time. September, October, throwing 300 plus a game, 3-4 touchdowns. Then what would the Patriots do in the playoffs? They'd run the ball. They would kill you with their offensive line. Their defense would go to work. They'd go from winning games 35-14 in September to winning a game 24-7 in the playoffs. But that's equally demoralizing when you know a team is going to run the ball against you and you can't stop them and you can't score against them. And I feel like the Chiefs have always kind of had that similar script of they know when to change it up. And when you're talking about two teams that have matched up so much against each other in recent years, do the Chiefs have anything up their sleeves for the Bills? And do the Bills have anything up their sleeves for the Chiefs? We don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's that likely. So I think this is going to be one of those old-fashioned like bar fights where just whoever has it that day is going to be the team that moves on.
My Chiefs X factor is going to be Trent McDuffie. I expect him to be on Khalil. I know he moves around and covers different guys. I expect him to be on Khalil Shakir a lot. You know, I think the Bills can have a ton of success. We've talked about this. I think the offense is just fine if Cooper don't have a big game. If Keon Coleman doesn't do much, I'm all right with that. But if Khalil Shakir is a non-factor for this offense, that could be trouble for the Bills because, I mean, he catches those bubble screens. He runs a lot of different routes. He's a security blanket. He's a go-to guy. You know, you go back to that Baltimore game, the one significant pass that Josh Allen connected with that whole game was on that first series, and that was that 34-yard pass on third down over the middle to Khalil Shakir to set up the touchdown that answered the Ravens' opening drive. I think you're going to see a lot of him on Khalil Shakir. That's not to say Khalil Shakir can't win against him. I'm just saying I think Trent McDuffie is going to be their X factor. For the Bills, I'm cheating a little bit because, you know, I kind of suggested it would be a player. But I think Bobby Babbage is going to be the X factor. To your point, look, if the Bills lose this game to a team that's just better on that day, I'll live with it. Like if Hollywood Brown gets behind DeMar Hamlin and, you know, or Worthy on a jet sweep, just beats whoever, somebody takes a bad angle, he score. I can live with those kind of things. I cannot live with Travis Kelsey having 8 catches for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. You know what's coming. I mean, I wasn't investing much in the Houston Kansas City game because I did not think that Houston had a real chance to win that game. Their defensive line dominated the Chiefs' offensive line. I like that, though. But their lack of commitment to knowing or their awareness where the hell Travis Kelsey is on the field so often was just mind-boggling to me. I can't be having that. Bobby Babbage has got to account for him every play. Let's not forget a year ago what happened. A.J. Klein primarily responsible for watching him. I think whether it's Milano or whether it's Milano kind of playing that spy role that he's done a little bit the last 2 weeks too, and maybe Bernard gets more looks on Kelsey, or hell, even Cole Bishop. So we'll see how that goes, but he needs to be accounted for. And we've spoken a lot about Matt Milano because I agree with every single thing you said. Let's hope he's good to go, that he's healthy on Sunday, and that hamstring soreness is just being precautionary and giving him a little time to, stay off of it, because he is such a big part of this game. Last thing I'll ask you here, man. What are we've talked about pretty much everything that could possibly go, in this game. What are you going into this game? What are your expectations for it? Like, what are you expecting to see? You want to throw me a prediction, you can, but you don't have to. But I do want to know, like, what's your expectation for this football game?
Yeah, I expect a tight game that's going to go down to the wire. That's a coin flip. I can't even tell you who's going to win this game. Last week I thought the same thing with the Ravens game. I feel the same way this week with the Chiefs game. I actually feel like the Bills match up better against the Chiefs than the Ravens, because I think the defense can slow down this Chiefs offense at times. I didn't think they had many solutions to the Ravens, although they did hold up long enough and make just enough plays to get the win. There's an interesting little nugget that I've discovered with Vegas recently. I don't know if this is mainstream knowledge, widely known or not, or maybe it's just me just picking up on stupid trends. But when I've seen teams that are 1 to 2.5 point underdogs going up against a team that the narrative is widely that they should win, I've noticed that the underdog typically wins these ball games. The Bills were I think they were 1.5 point underdogs against Baltimore, somewhere in that 1 to 2 range. Most of the national media is picking the Ravens. Slight money advantage on the Ravens. Bills win. I've noticed it the last 2 times my school played similar situations, they won. I noticed it with a UB situation. Minnesota was 2.5 point favorites against the Rams in the wild card round. They got smoked. So I've seen this happen 5 straight times where the team that was the underdog wins when it's between that 1 to 2.5. And the reason being is if you're truly a favorite in a game, you're going to be favored by 3 or more. Because how many games are decided by 1 or 2 points? Not many. Most games are decided by a field goal or maybe a little bit more. So I look at the line right now, and depending on where you're looking at, it's a 1 to 2 points. The Chiefs are at home. So that's just the home field advantage, giving them a slight advantage. That means the metrics think these teams are even. There's some metrics that think the Bills are better. So if the Bills go out there, they play their brand of football, they're probably the better team. I don't want to say they have to win one eventually, but you look at the regular season success. You look at how close those last 2 playoff games went. The Bills seriously could have won 6 of the last 7 against Kansas City.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm thinking it's about time they win one that matters. And like I said, I'm not going to pick it because it's still a 50-50 game. It could go either way. But I have this quiet confidence that the Bills will go into Arrowhead and get the job done. I'm not confident enough to say it on air and put a pick to it, but I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, probably in the low 20s, and hopefully the Bills get it done, because I really don't want to hear the narratives should they lose on Sunday. It's just going to be an entire offseason once again, and at that point, you just applaud Kansas City, and you're just like, you know what? You're the best of all time. I know people talk about Tom Brady and the Patriots. To me, if the Bills take down the Chiefs on Sunday, you're beating the best dynasty of the Super Bowl era in the NFL, in my opinion.
I feel this way. Baltimore, I honestly thought 1 to 53 was the better team. Not by much, but I thought they were the better roster. I feel the Bills 1 through 53 are the better roster over the Kansas City Chiefs. To your point, they've found ways to lose these games, these playoff games. They've won in the regular season, and they have found ways to lose. We don't need to talk about 13 seconds. You go back and you watch the film from last year, there were a lot of blown opportunities, drop passes, Trent Sherfield, 2 huge drops, Stephon Diggs, of course, a big drop, just self-inflicted, and plus injuries. Injuries were such a big factor last year. No Terrell Bernard, no Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas hopping around on one leg. So there were a lot of factors. It just they found a way to lose that football game. I truly think this is a better team, and I do think the Bills. Now I'm going to say my prediction for my show on Friday, but I do think the Bills, minus again Billsy kind of football that we've seen in the past. If you don't play like Baltimore, you don't turn the ball over 3 times. If you don't lose a turnover battle, or even if it's even, I love the Bills' chances. There's one thing that they need to do, though, and have success that we have not even talked about on the show. And I saved it for the end on purpose because to me, besides, again, if you could get the Chiefs a couple turnovers, that goes without saying. But the biggest key to victory, besides takeaways and things like that, and all the stuff we talked about, to me, is if you can effectively limit what Chris Jones does in this football game, it is going to be so huge. There are a handful of legitimate defensive game wreckers in the NFL. Chris Jones is one of them. If you're not blocking him well, he can stop that running game. And he sure as hell can make life miserable in the passing game. So stopping Chris Jones or at least containing him, keeping him quiet is such a big key. And the Bills have done so good at taking elite defenders and kind of making them almost non-factors in a lot of these football games. Well, last thing, and I got to let you go. Ariel Helwani had a comment or a tweet the other day. I wanted to ask you, does this make sense to you, or does this feel right to you? He said, with Josh Allen, this is his MJ moment. Like when the Bulls couldn't get past the Pistons, but then they did. Does this feel like that with you right now with the Bills? Josh Allen, is this his MJ moment where you get past the Chiefs? You can't keep taking it for granted. You're going to get cracked at year after year after year after year against this team. Here you are, and you got the Chiefs. Is this Josh Allen's MJ moment for you?
I certainly hope so. There's definitely a possibility of it, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
The Chiefs have been the big bad boys in their way. If they find a way to dethrone them, they're not just sending a message to the Chiefs. They're telling the whole rest of the NFL, we're ready. And
Yeah.
I think once you get that off your shoulders, what's holding you back from doing it again and going on a run? And that's maybe that's what's they need to do in order to really get that next level dominance and have a run of their own. Now, I want to get to 1 before I think about 2 or 3 or whatever, but knowing how good Josh Allen is, and if we're being real, Josh Allen has been a far better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
If they can get past Kansas City, and even with Peyton Manning with the Patriots, we all remember how he struggled. But after they got the win, Manning had some success against the Patriots for a little bit after that. So that could be what opens it up. So I do like the MJ comparison, because I think if Josh Allen can have his MJ moment, the future could be even brighter than what we've seen the last couple of years.
This is the way it has to end. This is the way it has to be for the Buffalo Bills. I feel like, look, if you win the Super Bowl, if they were to beat Houston or whatever, this game makes me more nervous because the Chiefs are winners. All the stuff we talked about, plus it's in Arrowhead and not Orchard Park. It would be easier if it was in Orchard Park against the Texans or the Chargers. No question about that. And maybe the Bills go on to win the Super Bowl. And that's awesome. But to go through the Chiefs, you got an opportunity to exercise all your demons during this regime and to go to Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs in their stadium with Taylor Swift and Caitlin Clark, I'm sure, going to be there now too, in those suites shown on TV anytime Travis does anything, which hopefully is not a lot, but you feel like this is the way it's got to be. Like, this is how you got to go and do it, right?
If the NFL was scripted, which I don't believe it is, it would be the perfect addition to the script, which I always joke about. I don't actually believe it is scripted, but it would be the way it should and needs to end for Josh Allen and the Bills to get past everything that has happened in the past.
Well, hopefully it does. We'll find out one way or the other. Make sure you guys are following Mike on Twitter at Mike_Bundt, Trainwreck Sports. This was fun, man. This was definitely fun. I feel a little bit better. I don't know. I'm just kind of like therapeutic this week. Just the more I talk about the Bills, the better I feel about going into Sunday, man. So this was a good time, and I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and let's hope they don't disappoint us. I'm not even going to say that. Let's hope they show up and they take care of business, and we're going to the Super Bowl. I don't even want to put any thoughts of not executing out there in the universe right now.
I hear you, man. All right, I will be back with a brand new show, Bills Chiefs preview and bowl predictions. Jared Bailey from the Sporting News is going to join me tomorrow.